Hello. Well, I want to share my thoughts on the Panorama programme and subsequent press coverage focusing on one menopause doctor and off-licence estrogen prescribing. I'm of course talking about Dr Louise Newson and Newson Health. I've waited a few weeks to record this as I needed to take the time to do really forensic research, to dig through the weeds of data and be able to speak with confidence on what has become a highly emotive but also highly important topic for women. Important not only for the reputation of a leading light in menopause care globally, but also to investigate the claims around the quote, over-prescribing of estrogen. Now, I do this with absolutely no vested interest or skin in the game, but in the interests of getting better, entirely factual and evidence-based healthcare information out to all women who may need it. So grab a cup of something, a notepad and a pen if needed, and settle in. So everything I share with you here has been verified and the healthcare science is backed by published studies. It's robust. I am not a medic. I'm a researcher. I've been researching menopausal women's healthcare for many years, decades. I've written several books on the subject and interviewed many globally recognised menopause experts for my podcast over the years too. My platform exists for the greater well-being of midlife women, sharing evidence-based information for a better second half, just like this information. Okay, so to begin, you may think it odd that the BBC chose to focus on only one doctor and her clinic when there are literally dozens of private menopause healthcare providers, many of whom, where necessary for a woman's health and well-being, prescribe estrogen at a dose that's higher than the current maximum licensed dose. Many of these private clinics are run by senior consultant gynecologists, such as Mr. Nick Panay, chair of the International Menopause Society. He and his team of doctors have prescribed higher than licensed doses of estrogen for well over a decade. More on that later. I will be coming back to that, I promise. So the Panorama programme, this was based on 5 complaints made by former Newson Health patients, dating back over 7 years. 5. The number of patients who've been treated by Newson Health is over 45,000. I'll let that sink in a moment. The entire takedown of Newson Health focused on 5 patient complaints and a few anonymous possible concerns from doctors who, for whatever personal reasons, are no longer working at the clinic. The number of women who've been treated by Newson Health number over 45,000, and there are over 70 seemingly happily employed doctors and clinicians working there right now. Doesn't seem like a big red flag, does it? Now, of course, one complaint is one too many. But compared to, say, over 112,000 written complaints lodged against NHS GPs just in 2023, this is a minuscule amount. And to be honest, not a single day goes by when I don't receive an email, a comment or a message from a woman complaining about a serious failing in appropriate menopause care, usually from an NHS GP, not one. So to get back to these 5 patients, was the programme a fair, balanced and proportionate investigation? Now this is important because it's deemed necessary for a public broadcaster when covering current affairs as regulated by Ofcom. And if it was not, how on earth did it come about? What was the history that got it on air? Well, there is a backstory, and I think midlife women deserve to hear it, along with the latest evidence based entirely on factual prescribing information that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. So, as Dr. Newson herself explained in a recent interview with the Daily Mail, this story started around 8 years ago when she approached the chair of the British Menopause Society with the offer to join forces to help improve menopause care for women. Great. The BMS chair responded by asking her to take down her website and stop calling herself a menopause expert. Louise replied, and I quote, "This affects 14 million women. Can't we have more than one website?" Yeah, quite right. So the BMS is a charity After all, it's set up according to the Charities Commission to promote the education of healthcare professionals on care of women going through the menopause. Dr Louise Newson has worked as a medical writer, educator and researcher, as well as a doctor, for many years, and so much of her work is about providing free and evidence-based information to as many people as possible globally. Education. The more awareness and help for both professionals and women alike, the better, you would have thought. Instead, members of the BMS have reported Dr Louise Newson to the GMC and her appraiser. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, the GMC's assessors could find nothing wrong. In fact, she passed with flying colours. And after another, even more recent review by the GMC, she was told she was, quote, as qualified as a consultant gynaecologist in this area. The BMS, however, removed her specialist status, with them stating that she's only a GP. And it seems to me that the BMS, a charity, should behave like a charity. They are not a regulatory body, and it is not their job to hound those attempting to help women. And it raises the question, what role did they play in making this Panorama programme? Quite a large role, I suspect. Sources report that at their conference earlier this year, a senior member of their board went around asking fellow medics to contribute to a documentary programme. They were, quote, involved in getting made about Louise. Many of those who witnessed this described it, quite rightly, as a witch hunt. Now, Dr Louise Newson is someone I have known for many years. I have always found her to be entirely focused on helping women get the best healthcare, the support, the knowledge and education they need. I would describe her as very driven, not motivated by money, but by the reason she became an NHS doctor in the first place, to improve the health of those in need. I admire and respect her. I've got to know her well, and I consider her to be a friend. In the interest of objectivity here, I thought I would review Louise Newson's medical credentials, friend or not. So, she qualified from medical school with an honours degree in medicine and also a first-class honours degree in pathology, 2 degrees. She worked first in hospital medicine, working in oncology with cancer care before moving into general practice. She is a member of the Royal College of Physicians and is a fellow of the Royal College of GPs. Now, a fellowship is the highest grade of membership, and it's a mark of excellence and recognition of a distinguished contribution to general practice. She's also a visiting fellow at Murray Edwards College, Cambridge. She holds a doctorate of health with Bradford University. Alongside her clinics, she has founded the Balance Menopause app. That's balance-menopause.com website. These are free resources available globally to help women free. Newson Health Research she's funded and founded, and this funds independent clinical studies. Her podcast has been the #1 medicine podcast, and of course she founded the Menopause Charity. She's written and contributed to many academic papers. She's involved with numerous research projects with several universities, including Liverpool, King's College London and Cardiff. Her area of specialisation is in the role of female hormones in future health. She's also a Sunday Times best-selling author, an accolade I'm proud that we share. Well, before Louise set up her private clinics, she tried to set up a menopause clinic in the NHS, but was consistently turned away due to a lack of funding. Increasingly concerned by the number of desperate women unable to receive treatment in the NHS, she invested in her private practice, not an uncommon thing for specialist doctors to do. But she did not do this to profiteer. Her aim has always been to help women who've been failed by the NHS to get them back on their feet and then refer them back to their own NHS GP, where they can then continue their care free of charge. Maybe this is what the establishment doesn't like. Well, in response to some of the allegations made by Panorama, she said that they absolutely do collaborate with the NHS and refer back to GPs, not only GPs, but also to oncologists. Now, Louise, remember, trained in oncology, cancer care. This referral back to GPs is something that I actually had confirmed to me a few months ago by my own NHS GP, totally independently, who said she's forever grateful to have had several women referred back to her, not only with an HRT prescription, but also a lengthy analysis of why the HRT is being prescribed and helpful further information and links to clinical studies. My own GP actually said that GPs like her are grateful for the free training and information they're being given, and that she often copies and pastes her Newson Health correspondence and sends this on to specialists working in gynecology in our local hospital, helping to educate more people. Dear Panorama, the lack of menopause medical training in our National Health Service, as well as updated prescribing information relating to natural hormones, is surely the real healthcare scandal here. In the UK, around 14 million women are perimenopausal and menopausal, but only 1 million of these are prescribed HRT, around 15%, a staggeringly small number when you consider that 75% of menopausal women experience symptoms. And it's not just symptoms, is it? We know that women are at risk of very real health risks when levels of hormones are low. We're at increased risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, and other chronic conditions, killer conditions. Well, everyone working in this area, from researchers to medics to MPs, such as the brilliant Labour MP Carolyn Harris, says there's much more that needs to be done in education, training, greater awareness. Women are 51% of the population. We need full and equal access to resources in the primary healthcare sector. Now, it is happening, thanks to some working in the field, but it's happening far too slowly. The average waiting time for an appointment with an NHS specialist, if you're lucky enough to be referred, is 18 months. Surely everyone working in this area believes this to be too slow. And yet I heard Dr Paula Briggs, until a few months ago the chair of the British Menopause Society and still a trustee, say, and I quote, "The worry is that things are moving too quickly." I could not disagree more. Paula went on to say that the BMS has already had 100 people complete their training course. So let's come on to that. 100 people completing the British Menopause Society Menopause Training Certificate, which costs £875 a pop, by the way. 100 medics. There are 37,677 GPs working in the UK, according to the latest published data. 100 medics trained out of over 37,000 GPs. When Dr Newson became aware of the slowness and the cost, she and her team of other well-qualified and experienced menopause specialists wrote the Confidence in Menopause course for medics, which was reviewed and accredited by the NHS. Over 33,000 medics have completed this training. Doctors, practice nurses, pharmacists, over 33,000. And this was initially given free of charge, with the sole objective of educating healthcare professionals so that women can receive the latest, up-to-date, evidence-based, peer-reviewed, solid and irrefutably safe information to help them. So what did the BMS do? Did they congratulate and celebrate a fellow menopause medic for her dedication to women's health? No, they worked with others to have it taken down so doctors could not access it. Not to be deterred, Dr Louise's team was able to have it reinstated on a different platform, but this has a cost attached. It's still available and health practitioners may like to check it out. It can be accessed through Dr Louise Newson's website, that is www.drlouisenewson.co.uk, but it costs £9.99 a month to pay for the new platform now. Although actually, if clinicians do the entire course in 1 month, and it's pretty easy and reasonable to do that, that price comes in for the whole thing at less than a tenner. So the difference in price between the courses is a staggering £875 versus £10, especially when that you consider the BMS is a charity, allegedly on a mission to educate healthcare professionals. Well, having shared a bit of the backstory here, and you can make of that what you will, let's come on to the main issue of the programme. The notion that prescribing more than the licensed dose of estrogen could be harming women. So let's look at the basic pharmacology. Women naturally produce estrogen when we're younger at levels of around 250 to 1,000 picomole per litre. When we're pregnant, levels rocket up to around 65,000, which is why pregnant women are often visibly blooming despite the immense strain on their bodies. Well, after menopause, our estrogen can plummet to 0, which is why so many women suffer symptoms and just feel so wretched. The maximum licensed dose for prescribing estrogen in the UK is 100 micrograms, not an enormous amount. But in a study of over 1,500 patients conducted by Newson Health, about a quarter of the women have been identified as being poor absorbers of estrogen, meaning that when an estrogen patch or a gel is applied to the skin, not very much actually gets through. Now, this can depend on skin type, on pH balance, epidermal thickness, ethnicity, fat composition, and so on. Remember, we are all different. Also remember, good levels are deemed to be around 250 to 1,000 picomole per litre, our natural pre-menopausal levels. So what about these high doses of estrogen being prescribed? How did this come about? Interestingly, Dr Louise Newson was not the instigator of this. Senior gynecologists were amongst the first here, and in fact it's long been advocated since the 1940s. There was even a paper published on high-dose estrogen back in 1974, giving women over 12 times the current licensed dose. And the researchers concluded, quote, high-dose estrogen provided significant alleviation of symptoms for a group of severely depressed women. So this dosing is neither new nor controversial, and Louise herself received some training by the eminent Mr Nick Panay, former chair of the British Menopause Society and the current chair of the International Menopause Society. As she said in interviews, she also saw him as a patient around 8 years ago because her HRT was not improving her menopausal symptoms and her NHS GP did not know how to help her. He, Mr Panay, prescribed her a higher than maximum licensed dose of estrogen, identifying that she, like many other women, is a poor absorber, and demonstrated that her blood estradiol levels was really low using 100 microgram patches of estrogen. So this personal experience set Louise researching how many women like her are poor absorbers of estrogen, and if this could be the reason why she sees so many women in her clinic who struggle on insufficient levels of replacement hormones. Well, a research paper soon to be published in Menopause Journal on this confirms that 1 in 4 women, 25%, do not absorb estrogen adequately through the skin, and higher doses to absorb the right amount are needed to get this into their bodies. So the key thing with estrogen dosing is to get the correct levels into the bloodstream. As Professor Mert Kara says, it's not about the dose, it's about the penetrance. He says, and I quote, if I prescribe 1,000 micrograms of a hormone and none of it gets through the skin, the effect is 0, which is why individualised dosing is so important. Well, if the leading lights of menopause medicine, such as Professor Nick Panay, the former chair of the BMS and current chair of the International Menopause Society, and many, many other doctors have been doing this for years, why has the spotlight shone on Newson Health? Well, Panorama have alleged that the 5 patients featured in the documentary were not monitored, something that Newson Health dispute and have records to prove it. Keep in mind here that we are talking about 5 women, 5 out of 45,000 women who've been treated by Newson Health to date. Now, in medicine, there will always be less than ideal outcomes, those who do not thrive. Show me one doctor who says their treatment regime is always entirely successful. But surely these statistics are not cause for the alarm that the Panorama programme created. Hormone replacement can help with many things, but it's not the cure-all for all physical or mental health disorders. Well, I think this leads me on to my final point here, and that is one of best practice and safety. We all want women to be well and to live their very best lives. I want all women to feel their best, including the 5 who were featured in the programme. I feel desperately sorry for all women who have suffered sometimes the most appalling care from their medical provider. I have received dozens of messages about this, and I do receive these messages almost daily, talking about the current state of NHS menopause care in particular, and I'm not even a medic. The doctors working in this area receive so many, many more. It is truly heartbreaking. Women who talk not just about not being able to sleep or being so debilitated by their symptoms that they go untreated and that they have to give up their jobs, the jobs they love, their marriages break down, they get extreme physical and mental health issues. They talk about constant joint pain, even sepsis due to recurrent UTIs, things like agoraphobia, depression, and even, tragically, suicide. This surely is the real and shocking scandal here. How much estrogen do we need to resolve symptoms? Well, estrogen in HRT is prescribed in much lower levels than those found in the contraceptive pill. Let me let that sink in for a moment. Lower levels. There are women in their 20s and 30s taking much, much higher doses of estrogen. This should not be controversial. Dose should depend on how well a woman absorbs estrogen. You may well need more than the licensed amount, which is hardly a rarity in medicine. Doctors commonly prescribe doses different from the licensed amount. There is no evidence that higher than the licensed dose of estrogen is a risk factor for cancer of the womb. No data at all. There's no evidence to back up this scaremongering. There's also no strong or reliable evidence to suggest that those on a higher dose of estrogen need a higher dose of progesterone to complement it. This is not surprising really when we're talking about actual absorption here. The dose is higher, but the amount that gets into the bloodstream will be similar. So it's being alleged that higher than licensed doses of estrogen contribute to an increased risk of a condition called endometrial hyperplasia, or thickening of the womb lining. Now, this is actually something that happens to women naturally each month before they have a menstrual period. In later life, if estrogen of any dose is given without progesterone, then this can be a risk factor for uterine or womb cancer, which is why progesterone is always prescribed alongside estrogen, unless, of course, the woman has had a hysterectomy, in which case there is absolutely no need for the progesterone. And there is absolutely no evidence that this risk of uterine cancer occurs with the modern natural form of estradiol, that's the transdermal kind, the gels, the patches, nor that it's dose dependent. Also, women who take both estrogen and progesterone have a lower future risk of uterine cancer compared to women who do not take HRT. We don't hear this in the media, do we? HRT reducing cancer risk. Now, of course, other factors can contribute to the development of uterine cancer, including being overweight, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension. My final thoughts? Instead of orchestrating a power play pile-on, those working in this field should be funding better research and education on all of this, as Newson Health does, with their generous research and comprehensive educational programmes. Women need much better care than we're currently getting. I consider the airing of this poorly researched, one-sided Panorama programme a backward step, focusing on the wrong people and the wrong concerns. As such, I have filed a complaint to both the BBC and Ofcom relating to the programme's failure to comply with broadcasting standards on accuracy, fairness and harm. I do not believe the programme represented the viewpoints fairly or impartially, which is especially important for news and current affair contents. I believe that both Dr Louise Newson and Newson Health were treated unfairly and they were misrepresented in a way that damaged their reputation. These are legitimate concerns and complaints based on broadcasting codes and standards. The content aired could also unnecessarily harm thousands of women by unfairly representing effective doses of natural hormone replacement therapy widely known to be safe. If you are similarly concerned, you will find further details on all I have discussed in the links below. If you're concerned enough to make a complaint, please do so on the BBC website, but also be aware that the deadline for contacting Ofcom, their regulator, is this Friday, the 25th of October. So if you're going to do it quickly. Thanks for watching.